All right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we're doing one that could almost be called like a special episode, even though it is just a main full Piecing It Together episode. But it's special because it's a movie that I absolutely never thought we'd be covering on the show. When this movie, The VelociPastor, was announced, I got as big of a kick as anyone out of the name, and I shared it, and I laughed, and I thought it was great. But, you know, with these kinds of movies, these direct-to-video kind of so bad it's good kind of things, I don't usually actually follow through and watch them. But I watched this one, and I actually had a pretty damn good time. I was very surprised by it. I partially watched it because friend of the show, Josh Bell, watched it and said that it was a surprisingly not that bad, fun time. And we're going to get into it in this conversation, but we're going to get into some puzzle pieces and our thoughts on the movie, and it was a fun one to talk about. I had a lot of notes going into this one because, I mean, just constantly through this thing, I was just jotting stuff down. It was impossible not to. I'm sure we could have talked even longer, although I don't think it was necessarily necessary for us to talk longer than we did. But we're going to get into that conversation in a second. I want to remind you all to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. You could also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and follow us on social media at PiecingPod. And you can join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. All right, that's enough. Let's get into the conversation about the VelociPastor. All right, so back with us today is Josh Bell. Josh, how's it going?
It's going well, and I'm excited to be here because I never thought I would devote this much time and energy to this movie.
I absolutely agree with that statement. Right off the bat, we're on the same terms here. I had no idea this episode would happen. Even when it first came out, I mean, I was very amused by the title, The VelociPastor. I was in so much as I don't think I'm going to watch it, but I'm totally on board with a movie being called this.
Yes. I figured, I mean, I'm with you. And then I knew, though, that these kinds of things that go viral, if I write a review, then that'll get some eyes on it. So I figured when it was announced, like, okay, I'll try to write about this because it'll probably be fun and people will read it. I've had that experience before with asylum type movies and straight to video movies. If they're fun, that people will look at them. So I was maybe a little more committed to this movie than you were, but I appreciate that you stepped up and committed to the VelociPastor as much as I did.
I want to be a real critic like you, Josh, and so I wanted to watch the VelociPastor.
Being a real critic is all about watching movies like the VelociPastor.
So we will get into some puzzle pieces here. This is going to be a little bit of a strange episode, partially because of the subject matter, and then also partially, I mean, I got to tell you, I have 3 puzzle pieces here, a couple others maybe in the back of my head, but I have more notes than I've ever had for an episode of Piecing It Together. Yeah, I just wrote all kinds of thoughts while I was watching this movie, and so, I mean, we'll see maybe a little all over the place as we go, but it should be a fun conversation.
Yeah, this movie does inspire a lot of thoughts.
Yes, absolutely. Well, why don't we get into your first puzzle piece for the VelociPastor?
All right. Well, my first puzzle piece is something that I mentioned in my review, and that is really the main thing that I was thinking as I was watching this whole movie, which is Black Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this movie is consciously trying to do for asylum style, straight to VOD trash what Black Dynamite did with blaxploitation movies. This director, Brendan Steere, is very aware of the long tradition of silly titles that are created before anyone actually thinks of what to put in the movie, that are made solely to have a ridiculous poster and get people's attention when they're scrolling through 8 billion movies on Amazon Prime, or whatever. And he's obviously trying to have some fun with it. I think what I liked about this movie is it wasn't just one of those movies where maybe they throw in a half-hearted joke here or there, but they're clearly just playing it straight. And nobody really cares about creating a quality product. Somebody gave them the title. They wrote the script in a day.
Yeah.
They roped in some B-level people who needed money and they threw it together.
Yeah.
And that's not what's happening here. I mean, this is a passion project for this guy. He spent 8 years trying to get this movie going.
It's funny you say passion project, because at the beginning of the movie, until I looked it up, I actually thought the writer-director was the main star. I didn't realize it was another guy.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's a, I'm not 100% sure, but there's a Daniel Steere who plays the sort of priest mentor character.
Right.
Who I have to assume is the director's like father.
Sure.
But I can't say that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a surprise, I think, that you would have sort of guessed that, because it does seem like the kind of thing that one person is really into doing it and they just do everything.
Yeah, they rope in some friends and some favors and whatnot. Yeah,
and just like do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of self-aware humor in this and making fun of the form of these kinds of movies. And some of the bits, it's been a long time since I saw Black Dynamite, but some of the specific bits, like a boom mic coming into the frame on purpose. And there's a lot of things in here where they over-explain the exposition, and the joke is kind of how much backstory they are giving you for absolutely no reason. Or the long flashback that like the priest mentor and the witch doctor get where they're in Vietnam, and things that are so irrelevant to the story but are funny because they're irrelevant. So yeah, I mean, I laughed more at this movie than I thought I would.
I have to agree. I did laugh more than I thought I would. And to the puzzle piece, Black Dynamite, I recently, I don't know if you saw that thread in the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces group, I had mentioned about, we were talking about how there are really no spoofs anymore. And this movie really does kind of ride a line between being one of these kind of direct-to-video trash type movies and being a spoof of them. It really is the closest thing I've seen to a spoof in a while.
Right.
And I think I appreciated that quite a bit, because I always used to love those kind of movies, and then they just kind of fell out of favor when they got really bad in the 2000s,
Yeah, all those Friedberg and Seltzer movies, which I never saw any of those, but the reputation is enough.
I saw one or two, and that is more than enough.
And
I unfortunately have never seen Black Dynamite. I have a feeling I would love it. It's one of those movies I just know I would love, and I just have never gotten around to it. But
if you like spoof movies, absolutely you should see Black Dynamite.
I'm going to have to get to it. Well, I'll go with my first puzzle piece, which, going along, you were talking about like some of those like needlessly long takes and like, just a lot of that like ridiculous backstory and all that kind of stuff. One movie that I was reminded of is Kung Pow, which is a movie that I absolutely love. Are you a fan of Kung Pow, Josh?
I have not seen Kung Pow, but everything that I've seen makes me think that I would hate it.
Yeah, I think you probably would hate it. But yeah, I mean, it's about, as humanly stupid as possible, and but combining all that ridiculous, just dumbness, with like a lot of like Asian cinema based humor and a lot of jokes based on the performance and the level of performance. I mean, there are some moments where like, either people are just super overacting or they're underacting, or you're wondering if they're even like awake while they're acting, and then like also like some strange editing and whatnot, as well as like like repeated moments or things where things happen multiple times for no good reason, and stuff like that. A lot of little things like that totally reminded me of like that Kung Pao kind of filmmaking, which also is basically, kind of like a spoof in a way. Again, going back to the spoof thing. And one other point on it, I'm not sure if in the screener that I watched, if that was actually on purpose, but the VFX insert here.
Yeah, I wondered that too, because we watched the same screener, and I am not 100% sure, but almost all the time, it is extremely rare for me to get a press screener that actually has unfinished effects.
Right.
In a movie, in TV, I get it actually quite often, but in movies, they almost never do that. So, and this movie has been around, like it wasn't unfinished. It played at film festivals and stuff.
Yeah.
And I read one other review that mentioned that as like a deliberate thing. I left it out of my review because I wasn't 100% sure, but I have a feeling it probably was in the final film.
I love how deep this movie is, that it could be read in multiple ways.
Yes,
right?
Yes, it really can.
Well, what do you got for your next puzzle piece?
So my next puzzle piece is Grindhouse, and not Death Proof or Planet Terror, but the whole Grindhouse experience.
Sure.
The idea that when they put that movie out, that it was emulating going to D-level drive-in theater or something like that back in the 70s, explicitly trying to look like a low-budget exploitation movie, including the trailers, those fake trailers that they have in the middle there for Machete and Don't, and was it Hobo with a Shotgun, I think.
Was Thanksgiving in that?
Thanks. Yeah, maybe it was.
Yeah.
And the Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS.
Yes, that's a good one.
So all of those, two of which ended up becoming real movies.
Oh, yeah.
Strangely enough. But yeah, I mean, and obviously Brendan Steere is very much influenced by not only the current straight-to-VOD trash, but also the trash of the past in terms of, lower on the bill drive-in movies or grindhouse films.
Sure.
And the VelociPastor itself started out as a mock trailer that he made in 2011, which you can watch on YouTube, and has a lot more of a grindhouse feel. That fake trailer has the kind of the fake film grain and the fake aging and stuff that isn't in this feature version, but you can absolutely see that trailer, if he had made it when Grindhouse came out, he could have submitted it like they did with Hobo with a Shotgun for the contest to be in it or whatever that ended up being that made that movie get in there. So yeah, I think he's trying to capture some of that feel, even though this movie ultimately is shot on very modern looking digital video and looks like somebody made it with their consumer grade camera in their backyard.
Now I have a question for you about that. Maybe you know, maybe you don't, but I was researching a little on IMDb before we got started, and there are trivia bits that would lead one to think that this was shot on film.
I would be shocked if that were true.
I
mean, just
shocked.
For budget reasons. I think he had a $35,000 budget or something. I've seen in interviews he mentioned.
I mean, certainly anybody can go in there and put a trivia piece in, but there are trivia pieces about how they baked the film and how they scratched it in the dark and stuff. And
that can't possibly be. I mean,
I
could almost believe that for the trailer.
Yeah, right.
Which he made. It was a student film, and film students maybe have more access to stuff like that via colleges or something, and it does have a filmic look.
Yeah.
There's no way this movie was shot on film. If this movie was shot on film, they totally fucked it up because it looks like crappy video.
Right. Oh my God, this movie is pretty ridiculous. I'm going to go with my next puzzle piece, which I'm going to talk one specific movie as well as the rest of the work of its director, and that is the film Orgazmo and the films of Trey Parker.
All right.
So going specifically to Orgazmo, I mean, you get this goofy religious white guy being thrust into this whole like ungodly situation filled with like, violence and sex, and he's always like got like one foot back in his world of religion and everything, and he's trying to resist it, but somebody talks him into using his newfound powers for, going out and doing good in the world. I just made quote symbols with my hands right here.
Yeah, and he stars in porn, right?
Yeah,
because he has a large penis. Is that the reason?
No,
I've seen this movie, but I don't remember anything about it.
He has like an actual version of the Orgasmerator or whatever, and he's able to fight bad guys by making them have orgasms.
Maybe I haven't seen this movie. I thought I had.
Well, that's kind of the Mormon version, but then just going to just Trey Parker's work in general. I mean, I think there's a lot of humor that kind of reminds me of things, anywhere from South Park to Basketball to just all the just really ridiculous, silly dumbness and. But fun at times, ridiculous, silly dumbness. And then even like Cannibal the Musical, which was actually a Trauma film, and I could have used Trauma as a puzzle piece even, but just all that kind of like DIY, just gore and silliness combined.
Yeah. There's a lot of Trauma in here. I haven't seen enough Trauma movies to cite a specific one, and I didn't have that on my list. But you can tell that there's a lot of Trauma influence going on here, and I imagine that Lloyd Kaufman probably would love this movie.
Oh, I would think so. Absolutely. Yeah, he'd probably want more nudity though, but otherwise he'd love it.
Yeah, they have that great sex scene in this movie where like they just bombard you with images to make up for the fact that there's no nudity whatsoever in this movie.
That girl was like, hell no,
yeah,
not for this one.
and I could not blame her.
All right, well, what do you got for your next puzzle piece?
So my next piece is Snakes on a Plane, which is similar to this movie in that it started out as a title that the internet kind of took hold of, and the filmmakers took their cues from the internet.
Sure.
I mean, in the case of Snakes on a Plane, it was a movie that existed and then became this big internet sensation, and they went back and kind of added things into it in order to cater to what people on the internet wanted.
Right.
And in the case of the VelociPastor, it was really the short film that he made and just the title in general that kind of went viral. And I think he probably took that stuff into account before making the feature version.
Yeah. And again, it is a great title.
It is a great title. And I don't know if you saw this, but I read in a couple interviews that he came up with the title because it's an autocorrect error from his phone. Beautiful. That he was trying to type Velociraptor and the phone corrected it into VelociPastor, and he decided that's a movie.
That's pretty great. That's a good inspiration right there.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I think like you were saying, when the trailer came out or when it was announced and they put out the poster, which is great and is completely non-representative of the movie.
Oh yeah.
People were talking about it online. People were amused by it. Just the idea of the movie existing, even more so than maybe watching the movie itself. And I think Snakes on a Plane was very much about that, to the point where all the people who were excited about its existence didn't go see it. Right. It made no money in theaters. All their efforts to cater to the internet were in vain.
I managed to get 3 people to go with me. So.
Yeah, I know. I saw it too. And I think it's kind of a fun movie, but it definitely did not live up to the image of it that people created in their minds.
Right. Absolutely. And that's funny because this movie, I mean, for everything that I did like about it, none of it has to do with the title or like the original conceit, which is so strange and kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I saw you mention this in your review as well, but even the raptor himself, it looks more like a Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah, it really doesn't look like a raptor at all. I mean, it barely looks like a dinosaur. Yeah, they really put the absolute minimum of effort into creating that costume.
I feel like if they had somehow just kickstarted a few bucks and done an actual CGI raptor or something, I don't know, or some good practical effect, maybe I'd give it an extra star or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously there's a humorous aspect to it, and I have to wonder if maybe when they realized, okay, we don't have enough money for the CGI, instead of trying to do the next best thing, they thought, let's just make it look really bad, because it'll be funny.
Yeah.
But they build it up for so long, and you finally get it at the end of the movie, and you're like, what is this? And it's running around and biting people and and it's just it goes on for so long.
Oh yeah. I would honestly say I liked everything else a lot more, which is just so funny based on the premise.
Yeah.
But, so I will go with my next puzzle piece, which is a movie I haven't seen since I was a kid. So hopefully I'm not way off here and remembering things, but I thought of American Werewolf in London, and just basically a lot of the setup, really. I mean, with this protagonist, getting bit, becoming the monster, kind of thinking he's dreaming at times, finally embracing it. And, I mean, it's been parodied so many times over the years. It's kind of just such a great concept to parody because it's such a classic monster story.
Yeah, I was trying to think of, as I was prepping, there's got to be so many werewolf and vampire and other monster stories about person travels to exotic location and is somehow cursed or bit or whatever and doesn't realize and returns to home.
Yeah.
And that's a good one. I've actually never seen that movie.
Oh, really?
It's a classic, obviously, but I have seen, for some reason, An American Werewolf in Paris.
Sure.
The sequel, and that may be the last movie that I paid for and walked out on before finishing. And that was 25 plus years ago or something. But I remember hating that movie so much that I could not even stay. So maybe I haven't technically seen it, but I definitely haven't seen the original Werewolf in London, but I probably should.
Yeah. Absolutely. I remember loving it, and I actually remember hating that sequel. So
yeah, it was very bad.
I'm with
Yeah,
you right
yeah.
there. Absolutely. All right. Well, what do you got for your, or do you have another puzzle piece?
Yeah, I have a couple more,
Okay.
and I can, run through quickly.
Sure.
The next thing I have is Big Trouble in Little China.
Okay.
And I thought of it mainly, and some of the things you kind of mentioned with American Werewolf, the clueless white guy who kind of stumbles into becoming a hero without really doing anything on purpose.
Yeah.
And the way he appropriates / is embraced by Asian culture.
Yeah.
I thought of that, and I think John Carpenter is a much better filmmaker,
Sure,
and had more resources. But I think he has probably the same kind of affection for some of the same B movies that Brendan Steere does, and is celebrating that stuff in Big Trouble in Little China, and is a movie where, it's got action and monsters and whatever, but it's definitely tongue-in-cheek and comedic, and it's all about quips and the hero making wisecracks and stuff like that I think comes up a lot in this movie too.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, except this hero, he's just so dry. He like barely makes a wisecrack.
That's
like,
true. Other people make wisecracks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that one, the one pimp character, he had some wisecracks.
What was his name? Frankie Mermaid?
I think so.
Because
yeah,
he's swimming in it.
He's swimming bitches.
Yeah.
That. Wow. Every like really low budget like comedy seems to have a Frankie Mermaid of some sort.
Yeah, it's an easy comedic. You can go to the costume store, the thrift store, and buy some pimp looking clothing, put them on a guy, get him a walking stick, and boom, he's a pimp. It's easy to come up with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what else do you got?
Well, the last thing is just really more title wise, and the whole sort of mashup title trend that's huge in these straight to VOD movies. And the one I thought of in particular was Sharktopus, which is a Roger Corman production, and obviously I think Roger Corman is an influence here as well, and churning out these movies quickly based on the titles, and you will come up with the details later kind of thing. And the actual content of Sharktopus is probably not particularly related to this, but the idea of when they announced that, people just laughed at it and thought, what kind of movie could possibly follow on that? And I've seen Sharktopus, and it definitely does not live up to the promise of the title, let's say. But I can see people being amused by that, and in the same way that they're amused by the VelociPastor and thinking, I got to see that because of the title. So yeah.
You know what I love is so for everybody listening at home, while I do these episodes of piecing it together, I'm always taking notes. That way we could do our finished puzzle. I'm writing down all the movies we talked about. And when I type Sharktopus, no autocorrect, but autocorrect had to do.
It's not aware of Sharktopus as a word.
Yeah, it's totally totally on board with me typing that word.
Yeah, all right. But if you type Velociraptor, will it autocorrect it to VelociPastor?
I think it probably would. I don't want to find out. Well, yeah, I'm out of puzzle pieces. I had a couple ideas, but I think this is a movie. We'll get into some closing thoughts here after I do the finished puzzle. But I mean, it's a movie that I don't think we really need to spend, an hour on or anything.
No,
we got some good pieces here, and a few more closing thoughts. But let's do the finished puzzle. The finished puzzle for the VelociPastor. It includes Black Dynamite, Kung Pao, Grindhouse Cinema, Orgazmo and the films of Trey Parker, as well as Trauma Films, Snakes on a Plane, American Werewolf in London, Big Trouble in Little China, and Sharktopus.
Yeah, and all the I love these mashup titles. I'm a sucker for bad shark movies, so I've seen a lot of these. I've seen Shark and Saw Women's Prison Massacre and stuff like that, which they never live up to the title.
Yeah,
but I did appreciate that. I saw in an interview with Brendan Steere, he said he was considering. He loves also the mashup titles, and he likes Pterodactyl for his next movie potentially. Nice. So I would watch that.
Well, I have to say to Brendan Steere, contact me. I'd love to score that movie. But yeah, aside from that, I loved the what's his name, Father Stewart. He actually had quite a few really funny moments, I thought, and The thing is like it found there's this thing with so bad it's good kind of movies where they usually tend to go either, too bad or not bad enough. And it really does kind of find a good middle ground. And I think it's because of that whole thing where it ends up kind of not even being necessarily that, even though it has all of that in it, I just think that's interesting,
Yeah, I do think, I think this movie it's very, very short. It's like 70 minutes long. And I think even so, it kind of ran out of steam far before it ended. And I think the 4-minute version is maybe the ideal version.
Sure.
But I agree. Like there were a lot of things that I had fun with. And for a lot of this movie, if I thought, okay, I'm getting a little bored or this is getting a little bogged down, some other funny thing would pop up. I did like the on-screen titles, especially towards the end when the love interest character seems to have been killed.
Yeah.
And then she's in the hospital that's clearly just like somebody's room somewhere. Yeah. And she's wearing a gown like over her clothes, I think it was.
Yeah. And China in the park was good.
Yes, that was good. That park was really versatile because it was like China. It was also the town where they lived. And it was it was Vietnam in the flashback, I think, as well. But yeah, the on-screen title when she's fine and it says like she's fine in these huge letters, I thought was very funny. And you mentioned the main actor, I think is Gregory Cohan is his name. And he plays it really straight.
Yeah.
And Alyssa Kempinski, I think, is who plays the love interest.
Sure.
They were shockingly good.
Yeah.
Like as actors, like buying into their characters as dumb as those characters are and like trying to make their love story convincing. And I think that goes a long way in a movie like this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they really, and they commit 100% to the whole, I don't know, just like the whole feeling of this movie. It's not so much the story because the story is very thin, but it's like the feel and like the way it is, that weird middle ground between spoof and so bad it's good and just bad, but like they really commit to that middle,
Yeah.
One other thing about that main character, you notice his name is Doug Jones.
Yeah, and that was on purpose, I believe.
A tribute to the actor who's in all the Guillermo del Toro movies and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, who's a great monster actor. He's on Star Trek Discovery as well. Is very good.
Yeah.
On that. Yeah, I saw again Brendan Steere citing Guillermo del Toro as a big influence, but I could not go that far as to actually say that I saw a Guillermo del Toro influence in this movie.
Honestly, I like this more than some of his movies, I'll have to say.
All right.
Maybe not all, though.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of his either, but I don't know if I would go that far.
Well, Josh, any final thoughts on this before we get to recommendation of something?
I mean, it's fun. I don't want to overrate it because it's not really like good.
Right.
But given that I had to watch it or I made myself watch it, I didn't mind it.
Yeah. Didn't mind it. That's good. I like it. All right. Well, what's something else that you watched lately that maybe you didn't mind even more?
Well, I will recommend a movie that I watched with my awesome movie year co-host Jason Harris. A movie called Plus One that is currently available to stream on Hulu. It's an indie romantic comedy starring Maya Erskine and Jack Quaid, son of Dennis Quaid, who looks a lot like Dennis Quaid, actually. And it's a kind of a formulaic as far as rom-coms go. These two friends, they have to go to all these weddings in a short period of time, and they decide they're going to be each other's plus one at all the weddings to make it more bearable. And of course, they fall in love and they learn a little bit about themselves. But it's funny. It's very well acted. It's got a believable romance. And we've had this sort of resurgence of rom-coms on streaming, some stuff on Netflix that is of variable quality.
Yes.
But I think this is actually probably better than most, if not all of those Netflix rom-coms that a lot of people have been watching recently.
Oh, that's cool.
It did come out in some theaters, not here in Vegas, but it's now on Hulu. And I think people, if you like rom-coms or if you just like well-made, small-scale indie movies, check out Plus One.
Right on. Yeah, I was actually going to ask before you ended up bringing up Netflix, but yeah, I mean, all the Netflix rom-coms have just been, I don't know, I just think they've been pretty damn bad. So it's like interesting that Hulu's making a good one. So
yeah, well, Hulu didn't make
they
this.
didn't make
I mean,
it.
They picked it up for after theatrical, but that's how
yeah.
most people will probably see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Why don't you go ahead and plug Awesome Movie Year and then also your website and everything.
Yeah, Awesome Movie Year is the podcast I co-host with comedian and filmmaker Jason Harris. We take a look back at a different year in film on each season. We're currently going through our first season on 1994, and we've talked about some interesting, varied movies, including weird stuff. I think we have some oddball movies, maybe not quite in the vein of the VelociPastor, but some strange stuff coming up. We talked about big movies like Pulp Fiction and Clerks, and Dave is our awesome producer, putting it all together and doing a great job. So yeah, awesomemovieyear.com. Find it on all the podcast places. Look for Awesome Movie Year, and you can find my stuff at joshbellhateseverything.com or on Twitter at SignalBleed and on Facebook at Josh Bell Hates Everything.
I can't wait to tell Jason that I didn't watch the next few movies you guys are going to cover on Awesome Movie Year, but I did watch VelociPastor.
Yeah, he's going to love that.
This is Todd from I Heart Geek. We believe that anything you're passionate about is geek. And if you are a geek, you are family here. We record once a week and would love to have you join in our conversations. You can get hold of us at www.iheartgeekshow.com. Use the .com, we paid extra for it. You can get us at Twitter at iHeartGeekShow. And you can always search us on our Facebook page as well. And keep on geeking on.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about the VelociPastor. It was a lot of fun. Nice little last-minute addition to our lineup for the podcast, but hey, I had a lot of fun doing it. And if you haven't watched it, if you've been on the fence, if you thought, based on the title, I kind of am on board, but I'm not quite sure if I should watch this one, I'd say watch it. It's worth seeing. It's a lot of fun. So that does it for today. As always, I want to remind you to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together. And if you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you would rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. That would help us a lot. And of course, share the show with your friends. That would be incredible if you did that. This show over the last couple of months has had just the biggest growth spurt, and it's crazy. There's so many new people listening, and I really appreciate that you're all out there listening. So keep sharing, and we're going to keep making them for you guys. We got a whole bunch more episodes on the way. Some movies that are a little bigger than the VelociPastor, but hey, we're going to do more indies along the way as well, so we'll get to some more of those along the way. So, I think that does it for today. Make sure to join Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. We just did a great contest in there, and got more contests coming up soon, so make sure you join that Facebook group if you're on Facebook. So let's finish this thing off as we always do with a piece of my music. And you know what? Way back when, in the beginning days of Piecing It Together, we covered a movie that I did a whole bunch of music for called Bus Party to Hell. And I did the theme song for that movie. And, in the spirit of trashy B-movie, so bad it's good, just total fun, ridiculous kind of movies, let's go back and play that theme song again, because I love that song. I'm still very proud of how it came out. It's just so ridiculous and so much fun, and it's a fun movie, so go check out Bus Party to Hell as well, and then go back and listen to our episode if you never heard it. We also did a interview with the director. So this is Bus Party to Hell. Enjoy it, and we'll be back next week with more Piecing It Together.
We're on a party bus. and all points west.